Mirrors and Dreams, Book 2 of the Unseen Scar series, written and narrated by C.R. Saxon. Chapter 2. Sunshine warmed his back. It was the most glorious feeling, aside from being able to work without restriction. Elby looked down at his hands. If he hadn't seen, there wasn't anything to suggest they'd been damaged. No scarring, his nails grew in quickly without any issues, aside from some stiffness. I wonder when they'll let me use them again. Healers Gerard and Nami did a wonderful job, were doing so still, but ideas were piling up. He wanted to build. Returning his attention to the screen, Elby continued reading, though he couldn't stop mismatched eyes from drifting to his hands. Amazing. How do you study like this? That voice made Elby smile and lean back to look up. Above him floated his sweet mate. Snow-white hair swayed and impossibly black eyes glistened. This is the only way to study. Going to training, how you? No, Master Tuel had an assessment. Banner just lowered himself to sit next to Elby, elbows on knees and head in hands. I'm bored, though. You don't have any schoolwork? How you grimaced and looked away. I can't believe you haven't taken a break. I've been on break for weeks. Laying back, Elby let the soft grass cradle him. Can't wait for it to be over. Not being able to work because you're hurt isn't the same as taking a break. How you leaned over to give Elby a disapproving look, careful not to touch him. I can't disagree with that. He wanted to build. His hands wanted to make something, anything. But no matter how he pestered them, healers Gerard and Nami refused to rush. Logically, Elby knew this was the best for him. Lifting his hands to float above his head, he studied them, aside from stiffness. But if he justified using them, he could make them worse, which would impact the rest of his life, and he didn't know how many people he'd disappoint. Are you okay? Elby lowered his hands to rest on his belly. You've been staring at your hands for 10 minutes. Huh? Focusing, his arms were a little tired, but nothing like holding them over his head for that long. It wasn't 10 minutes. Maybe. Benner just lifted off the ground to float over his island brother. But it was a while. I thought you'd fallen asleep like that. What you're doing, Oya? A tall man in a floppy fishing hat walked up and sat beside her on the sand. Are you sure it's wise? Oya winked at the orbs in her peripheral and looked up at the starless twilight sky and full moon overhead. Is it better to do nothing? Even if you can make the girl's brain look the same, that doesn't mean it is the same, or that it'll work the way she needs it to. Concern coated the fisherman. This isn't a broken bone or a cut. It's the most complex organ you're messing with. Oya let out a frustrated huff. Why do you think I'm studying others? I'm making sure. And how's that going? That question cooled her off. The other girls her age, their brains aren't the same. I tried looking at Elby's, but flames took over and I couldn't get anywhere. Shouldn't that be warning enough? And it's better to do nothing, in this world? Sand kicked up when Oya jumped to her feet. Doing nothing dooms her to a life of nothingness. It'll kill my friend and destroy everyone who loves her. If any of it isn't perfect, that life of nothingness would be paradise. Oya took in the world of purple-gray, a world that never changed. If I do something wrong, she won't realize there's nothingness, and that's better than being trapped in it. Oya looked down at the silver spiderweb thread wrapped around her hand. A few other strands weaved around it, but she hadn't scratched the surface. She was no longer in the state of mind to work on something so delicate as a brain, but there was something else she needed to do, something she'd been neglecting while helping Yu. Letting out her frustration on that wouldn't hurt anyone. Even if it did, they deserved it. Don't worry, I'll make sure. It's not just the girl, it's affecting you too. Before she could wave open the door to the silver roads, the fisherman stepped in front of her. You can't tell me you don't feel it. It doesn't matter. Besides, it's not worse than this. Oya held up the few strings she'd collected. Part of her felt like laughing. Helping Yu doesn't change the outcome for me. No answer came, though the fisherman looked desperate to give one. A snap summoned the door-shape opening. Please keep watching him. Defeat sighed out of the man. The infection's returned, if it takes over again. Oya turned away. I know. You've noticed the change in his mind as well. Yes. When she didn't say more, the fisherman stepped in front of her again. Are you sure about this? Yes. You only live once. I'll make it the best life I can for my dear friend. A lucky few live twice. What's so lucky about that? Shadows darkened Oya's countenance. The silver roads came into view and she stepped onto the first one. I made 3 promises. I'll keep them all. Isn't that an admission of who you are? She sneered at the man. He's trying to delay me. I can keep a promise without admitting everything. Why is admitting it so hard? You even wear a veil neither of us can see through. The fisherman gestured to Oya's facade. Are you scared of the truth? No. Inhuman green eyes and a Cheshire grin turned back to him. I don't want to think about it. Why let my reflection remind me every time? And when someone finally sees under the veil? A sad chuckle left her. I pity the soul so broken to see past it. Silence fell. It suited her twilight beach perfectly. No matter when she came, it always looked the same. Calm oceans, various shades of twilight purple painted the sky and beach, a constant gentle breeze. There was no life, no stars, no time. But then, it's the empty spaces that are the most beautiful. The only thing breaking the view was a giant moon, shining silver white against the gray background. This place separated from time. How perfectly it suited her. How often have I come here? How many hours have I lived in this place? And when did I first arrive? Oya sighed and turned her eyes to the silver roads. It had been bright and colorful at first. How long ago was that? Not that it mattered. This was the last metamorphosis the beach would see. Until the next person came. The next person. There was so much to do. Rescuing Yu from her damaged mind. Finding every connection that woman tainted. Making her dear friend happy, healthy. And Zephyr too. There's so much. Just focus on what I can do right now. Stepping forward, Oya made her way to the Kajoma. Music bounced around the lab, but it didn't drown out the truth. Zhao couldn't help Yu. His charge. Yet, Ferdinan saved her. And he sat doing nothing. I have no right being angry. Unlike the skeleton, Zhao understood his place as a scientist, and didn't impinge upon the world of healers. But it was like jumping into an ocean with an open wound. Everyone, the boy would gladly... Zhao shook that line of thought from his head. It wasn't helping, nor was it leading anywhere pleasant. Gerard refusing him to tell anything about Yu only made it worse. His sweet mate was the healer's lead and the main student assisting Healer Bear. No, stop it. Focus on Elby. I can help him. Every day he made sure the small boy wasn't blaming himself. He was keeping Elby from becoming like Ferdinan. He did that. How juvenile am I? I'll be a young man in a matter of days and I'm still feeling like this. If only his mom would send more for him to do. But she refused. She wouldn't let him leave school early, wouldn't let him help from afar. Clenched fists bashed the desk he was unsuccessfully working at. Blue-black eyes drifted to his sister's picture. I couldn't do anything for you. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You deserved better. The mounted screen beeped, reminding Zhao of his session with Master Lucé. It's morning? When did that happen? Zhao sighed. What's the point? The sessions were as useless as trying to sleep. Nothing either of them said or did would change anything for him, so why steal time from someone who could be helped? Pulling up a new box, the science lead considered his reply. I'm tired of canceling. But the appointments were made despite his wishes. Zhao turned back to Ruer's picture. She was beautiful. But in his mind all he saw were her charred, twisted remains. No, think about something else. But what replaced that image were thoughts of his devastated country. No, something useful, something you can control. But all he saw were his sister's remains. It was a never-ending cycle. Stop it. I've got work to do and people to care for. Setting his jaw, Zhao spun the most magnificently mundane lie, filled with partial truths and warped realities. And when he finished, he was satisfied Master Lucé wouldn't pester him for another session. He was well and adjusted, and had all the resources any new could ever want. The latest reports of his country flashed through his mind, sending a shiver down his spine. But he didn't want to think about that. Everything was beyond his control or already taken care of. But there was one thing he hadn't found yet. I need to know. This desire annoyed his island brother, but it was something he could do. No matter how useless he was, he could find the scientist who saved his country. Besides, what sort of new doesn't properly thank the one who saved his people? But finding a starting point had proven problematic. Work backwards. Who sent the message about the cure and instructions to make it? Pulling up a search box, Zhao went to work. And he didn't stop until the screen blurred, nearly falling off his chair. Drooping eyes turned to the window. It was dark again. But that didn't matter. He couldn't stop. If he stopped, well, he wouldn't sleep anyway. Standing, the thinker jogged in place, until another beep interrupted his exercise. Now what? Looking up at the mounted screen, Zhao saw a waiting call from Gerard. Why is he awake? I'm here so I don't keep him up. The healer needed to sleep so he could get Yu better. Why won't he tell me how badly she was hurt? There was no point reading the message. He knew what it said. It was the same arguments they'd had for weeks. Opening a new box on the screen, Zhao sent a short message. Yes, I ate dinner. No, I'm not answering. I've got a large project to get through and you need to rest your body so you can work tomorrow. Good night. Sleep well. Jeopardizing Yu's recovery. A little insomnia is nothing to worry about. Fill my charge, make her better. It took grabbing his head to stop those thoughts. Scientist. Focus on finding the scientist.